Hi students, this is Robin Powell. I miss you. I hope you're having a wonderful day. The book I'm going to read is called Mrs. McBloom, Clean Up Your Classroom by DiPucchio. It's a fact that nearly every school from Kennebunkport, Maine to Chickaloon, Alaska has one teacher whose classroom is a sorry jumbled up mess. Knickerbocker Elementary in the pint-sized town of Up Yonder was no exception. Mrs. McBloom in room 5 had a classroom that would impress even the most clutter-loving junkyard dog. It was a heap of mess on account of her never cleaning it, not once in 50 years of teaching. Every year, Mrs. McBloom's students yammered, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." For decades, Principal Pumpernickel pleaded, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." 22 janitors came and went over the years. They all grumbled, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." "Oh, higgly piggly," Mrs. McBloom would say, "it's on my to-do list." Truth is, it had been on her to-do list for nearly 45 years. See, it's listed right here above. Take a fancy schmancy cruise. Room 5 hadn't always been an eye-popping, heart-stopping disaster. When Mrs. McBloom first started teaching, long before that Armstrong fella set his tootsies on the moon, it looked like this. Round about the time Principal Pumpernickel was a little nipper in her classroom, it looked like this. Now, 1 week before Mrs. McBloom was fixing to retire, her room looked like this. Giant sunflowers drooped over desks like decorative lamps. Tangly vines with fat green beans climbed the walls, and a genuine, full-grown, ruby-red apple tree grew smack dab in the middle of her classroom. Years of science experiments had left all kinds of critters hopping and clucking and flying around room 5. Chickens laid eggs in the coat cubbies. Butterflies fluttered back and forth between children's heads and pencil erasers. There was even more books stacked in Mrs. McBloom's room than there were in the entire Up Yonder library, and you can bet your uncle's monkey that there were more piles of paper crammed into room 5 than there were in the entire Up Yonder paper airplane factory down the road. Now, something drastic had to be done right quick. Sweet young Miss Bumblesprout was preparing to take Mrs. McBloom's place in the fall. Mrs. Bumblesprout fretted, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your room. Pretty please." "Oh, higgly piggly," sighed Mrs. McBloom, scratching her beehive hairdo. "I've backed myself into a pickle. How am I ever going to get this room cleaned up in a jiffy?" The rooster perched on the piano belted out a hearty cock-a-doodle-doo. "That's a humdinger of an idea, Rudy. Much obliged," said Mrs. McBloom. Mrs. McBloom moved a cluster of frogs aside and wrote an assignment on the board. Homework. Come up with an idea to get room number 5 tidy, lickety-split. Be creative. Stretch your imagination. Use your noggin. Anything goes. By the end of the following week, the whole class was busting with excitement. One by one, kids came to the front of the room just past the mushroom patch, but before the mountain of unclean mittens and gym sneakers, to share their ideas. Sam Wigglesworth had invented a super-duper picker-upper thingamabob. It can pick up from 0 to 10 in 60 seconds. Lily Lumpkin suggested Mrs. McBloom hire a magician. Then, abracadabra, everything will disappear. Cooper Butterbaker brought in a herd of hungry goats from his daddy's farm to demonstrate their voracious appetites. They once ate a rusty pickup truck in 3 hours flat. On and on the ideas kept coming. Mrs. McBloom recorded them on the chalkboard. Georgia Peach Pit was the last student to raise her hand. She stepped over the world globe, shooed Cooper's goats, and unrolled a colorful poster board. Help Mrs. McBloom clean up her room day. All of Up Yonder is invited. Saturday, 10 a.m. If each citizen shows up to remove one item, room number 5 will be tidy lickety-split. Free eggs and apples to everyone who helps. By Georgia, that's it, hollered Mrs. McBloom. A dilly of an idea. Word of help Mrs. McBloom clean up her room day spread through the town faster than Corky Redmond's chickenpox in the spring of '99. Seeing as nearly every citizen of Up Yonder had been a student of Mrs. McBloom's at one time or another, the whole town showed up on Saturday to help. A line loop-de-looped through the halls, out the door, down the hill, and past the water tower. Single file, folks moseyed through room 5, picked up one item, and moved on. The Up Yonder Kazoo Band provided live entertainment. The PTA passed out free refreshments, and Mrs. McBloom got to personally shake hands with all her former students. She bawled like a baby in wet breeches. Heavens to belly buttons! The treasures pulled from the rubble were astounding. Long-lost works of art, important historical documents, and rare geological finds were rediscovered. The Up Yonder parade of pickers went on plucking for hours. Among other things, they fished out 4 feathered quill pins, a pot-bellied stove, 3 buffalo nickels, a postcard signed by President Roosevelt, 13 petrified cupcakes, a poodle skirt, a howdy-doody coffee mug, a litter of kittens, a rotary dial telephone, and a flag with 48 stars. Clay Potter found his library book. It was 35 years overdue. Fanny Freckle found her Elvis Presley lunchbox. Her lunch was still in it. P.U. And after 20 years without them, Billy Brownbuckle finally got his eyeglasses back. It's a miracle! I can see! By sundown, room 5 was completely cleaned out. The apple tree was replanted next to the playground and dedicated to Mrs. McBloom. Principal Pumpernickel awarded Georgia the prestigious Knickerbocker Whippersnapper Award for Excellence. Splendid use of your noggin, Miss Peachpit. Thank you, sir. All in all, it was a mighty fine day for all the good folks of Up Yonder. In the days that followed, the town held the granddaddy of all yard sales and sold all the knickknacks, critters, and whatnots that had been uncovered from room 5. The money raised was used to send Mrs. McBloom on a fancy schmancy cruise. Oh, higgly-piggly, bless your hearts. Bon voyage. As for sweet young Bumblesprout, she began her teaching career that fall in a gussied up, spiffed up, tidy room 5. Good morning, class. Open your science books. Today, we're going to plant pumpkin seeds.